The next of the folds that we're going to look at here is the zigzag fold. And with the zigzag fold, we have a number of different tension points going on all the way through the form. Again, let's refer back to this cylinder thing again. Cylinder form. All right, so zigzag folds occur in many instances with clothing really tight to the body, or heavier materials like mid-grade materials, cottons, heavy cottons, material that has weight and density to it. And then if we have a sleeve that's slightly longer or a pant leg that's slightly longer than it should be, that's also another instance when material bunches up. Now, what a zigzag fold is a mechanical crease in the material. There's a couple different types. Over here, these are the mechanical creases. Now, this mechanical crease is in the fabric. Right across the line of the woof and the warp, the fabric is creased. And as a result, it's an area now where the material is going to fold over on itself. What this material is up here is loose material that is dropping downward. And what this material is down here is a continuation of that material, counteracting it in a different direction. But we could also say at the joint here, it's the material going upward. So we have two different directions happening. And we do want to think about this for a second when we're drawing an arm. Do we want to favor all of the angles that aim upward? Or do we want to favor all of the angles that aim downward, right? And in doing that, there is direction, there's movement, and there's motion with these lines. So we want to really think about that. This is a beautifully designed zigzag fold. If we had this with this arm up here, it might feel a little bit out of context because this one has such a extreme in this space while this one is scattered all throughout the material. So that kind of shows that the materials themselves are almost different from one another. This is also something to think about when we are now building a picture and we're taking different references. If we don't take from a similar kind of material, then more than likely we're going to be designing all sorts of mishmash looking things that don't really coordinate together. And that's a concern, of course, when we are starting to design our picture. So now the zigzag fold, we have all these little tension points. And the tension points are coming from, again, these corners in the material where the different threads are crisscrossing each other. There's a lot of excess material, and yet it's fairly close to the body. It might not all just drop like this. In fact, it would be very strange if material did just do that only. There's tension points that are building and occurring, and these go all the way around the arm. So these triangles aren't just within one space between here and here. Most of the time, they're traversing spaces, as we can see with this example right here, or even with her leg. This triangle over on this side, the triangles over on this side. You only see half of that shape that's in there. It's more like a diamond more than a triangle because we're talking about the upper and the lower half. If part of it is missing, that part of it is around the corner. So again, with ellipses, it's the best way to start it off. We have this direction, we have this direction. This is the top edge of this triangle. This is the bottom edge of the triangle. This ellipse is telling me how I'm getting around the form. So I know that these elliptical lines coincide with the cylinder I'm building on top of. It's not just a triangle for the sake of drawing a triangle. It's actually something interactive with the material or with the form underneath. So now this has a buckling quality to it. That's also something to think about. If this shape is going around the corner like this, there is volume to this. And we need to be mindful of that volume and which direction we're favoring. In this case, we're looking up underneath the fold, so we're going to favor the underside of this shape along here and less of the top side. And the more we change those edges, like I'll change it down here. I'll drop this one lower. And that does coincide with going around the corner, right? And in fact, if you wanted to draw this correctly, this is how you would draw it. You would draw the entire arc as it's traversing the corner, and then, of course, erase what you don't need and only leave behind the indications that are left, and you'll have the correct perspective automatically. This goes around the ellipse this way. This goes around the ellipse this way. The volume goes around the ellipse this way. And that's the shape that I'm left with because of the type of arcing line that's going around the form. And where these intersect one another, remember the eye of the fold, you're going to have some kind of, I wouldn't call it a perfectly sharp corner, more like something like this where there's almost two corners in it. And sometimes the material line between the two ellipses, sometimes it's going to be, let's turn this one this way, sometimes it'll be something like this. It'll be a little column. This is a stiffer material. This is a material that doesn't collapse down so easily. It's still triangular-like, but it's much more box-like as well in terms of the overall construction, because the triangle or the diamonds that we are working with now are getting smushed upon themselves. So this is what's happening to them as a result. What once was this is now this here. Something to think about with these. Every one of these you can see blisters outward and it becomes a radical shape. You want to be very mindful not to draw all of that crazy stuff on both sides of the silhouette in any drawing that you do, if you can help it. And you want to really hone in on the design of it and simplify it down a little bit. So this underside, as a good example, we could simplify it down in just a few places. We can have that overlap at the elbow because it's a good idea to show off where the elbow is. And we might have a little bit of overlap over here at the cuff. Up here, we have to simplify. We'll use this one. We'll use this one. We like this shape here. We like this shape, but then we're going to smooth this out, simplify this, and smooth this out. The reason we need to think like this, we need to design the figure so that the figure is legible. And when the clothing gets so out of control busy, it is very difficult to understand what the figure is doing. And I'll make an example of that over here. Let's say we have a torso here, a neck, and the bottom of the chin. We draw an arm like this. We draw another arm like this. And then we put the folds on them, and I'm going to do something similar to that. We're up here and down here. We've got this, and then we've got this over here. Along in here, we've got these things. And if you notice, as I add these angles to the drawing, because I think I'm adding fabric, what I'm actually doing is changing the entire shape. Notice how his elbow has become a gigantic swellbow. Same thing over here, another big old blocky elbow, because the folds are misinterpreted and they're hanging off of the wrong parts of the body. And there's just too many of them. So by starting with these nice cylinder forms that we've been doing since figure construction, and just adding a few muscle lines onto those to articulate the anatomy underneath, that's what you want to preserve. And then put the clothing on. We'll make it a 3/4 sleeve. Maybe in the elbow or maybe in the shoulder up here, we add one fold, and it goes mostly with the muscle, so it's not that distracting. And then maybe we add a second one down here at the bottom of the deltoid where the muscle changes direction anyway. So now we've got a couple disruption lines in there. And the rest of this we can pretty much keep tight to the body. Maybe we hang it off of this side over here just slightly, but then we pick up the muscle rhythms again. A fold maybe in the elbow, somewhere around in there, and that might even turn into a zigzag fold eventually. But we are simplifying everything down for the focus of the figure underneath and not the focus of the material. So the material becomes an edit. As long as those cylinders are simple, you can go to town doing anything you want to do in between. And we can do all this stuff here, and we can go crazy with it. And what we just need to do is figure out a game plan for simplicity so it doesn't really get distracting. Because the more we take away from the overall length of the arm by cutting it up into segments, the less legible the arm is and the less dynamic the arm is. So zigzag folds, they're in a lot of modern clothing, t-shirts, jeans, the whole bit. But we just want to be really mindful about designing with it, because this example shows, and this example here, I'm going to copy paste this over in really quick. As this example shows, notice how crunchy his arm looks, right? The arm doesn't really read very easily underneath there. If we design our pictures with all that crunchiness in it, then we've definitely got some concerns with the person that sits underneath that clothing and whether or not their body is intact. So design is going to be a key factor here, and I'll go over that again with the physical demonstration at the end of the class.